Hi, this is Russ from Pro Tools Expert, and I have in front of me an Arturia Mini Brute, which is a real, yes real, remember those, analog synthesizer. And it's just great to get your hands on something physical, and it really is physical. And I think the first thing I want to say about it, because I'm going to do a show and tell of this Mini Brute and then tell you more about it, is that it just feels great to start with. It's really solid when you pick it up. It's got some real depth to it. It doesn't feel plasticky at all. It feels really tough and stuff like that. So there we are. Got loads of connections on the back. Got MIDI in, MIDI out, USB in. Then you've got your gate sources, and we'll talk about gate sources in a while. Audio out, audio in, headphones, and then lots of connections, CV gate out and CV gate in, and you can send that and bring it into different sources on the synth. So I think the first thing I want to say, and I don't want to sound patronizing when I say this, is you really need to understand how to use a synth if you're going to get anything out of this. And what's really nice, I've just opened up the manual, and the manual does give you some indication of how to make sounds, but you really do need to understand how waveforms work, what waveforms make which sounds and that kind of thing before you're really going to get it out of it. But I'll give you a full show and tell of the surface here, and then I'll show you some of the sound. In fact, before I do a show and tell, I've just created this kind of really... If you put a sub on, I'll put some headphones on. Kind of low drum sound. Using the sub oscillator, a bit of saw, a bit of square, and a bit of triangle, and a bit of noise, and then using the filter and the envelope amplifier envelopes. So let's do a show and tell from the top left all the way through, and then we'll talk about some of the sounds you can make with it, and I'll give you some quick examples of the kind of things you can do. So what we have left to right, top to bottom, is we have a choice of sub-oscillators. We have between a square and a sine, and a sine, of course, is really useful because it can give you that really low sub, and it doesn't actually get changed by filtering, because it's a pure tone, and so very useful in sort of subsonic stuff as well in the sub-oscillator. So the sub-oscillator is there, and it's controlled. There's the volume source there. Then we have the choice of a saw, which we can ultra-saw, and of course ultra-saw is big in dance music these days. We have a square, which we can change the pulse width of, and I'll show you that in a moment as well. Then we have a triangle, and I have a thing on there called the metalizer, and the metalizer takes it from a very pure triangle, which is nice for kind of fluty sounds, stuff like that, to something really much more bright and harsher. And then we have on these two here envelope amounts, and we have an ultra saw rate on the oscillator. Then we have a filter. We've got cutoff resonance mode, low pass, band pass, high pass, and notch filter. We can then assign that to the filter envelope here. And we can put keyboard tracking on as well. So it depends if you want the filter to work across the entire keyboard. So you can just turn that right off, or you can choose to have keyboard tracking so it's brighter at one end than it is at the other, or a duller at one end than it is at the other. Then we have an envelope speed, which is useful as well, very useful on the filter. And then we have a thing called the brute factor. Now, the brute factor is where they've taken the headphone output. What you could do is take the headphone output, feed it back into the synth, and just sort of create a feedback loop. Now, they've done it internally, and if you use this and you push this up, it can do some real damage. It's fantastic. It's really filthy. So if you want to create some really filthy sounds, then brute factor might be the thing to do. But what you have to be careful of is it can be quite unpredictable, because it starts to self-oscillate and all sorts of things, which is really... well, great for some of us if you want to get some real filth out of it. Then we have the phone's volume, the master volume, and the fine tune. Now, the one thing I want to say, it's a real analog synth, and again, something that most people won't remember. And if you haven't joined the debate yet on the blog, we're talking about this whole kind of digilog era where we've got digital helping us to create analog things. Now, one thing that virtual synthesizers haven't actually shown to many people who weren't around in the generation of analog synths is you just have to turn them on and let them warm up. You have to let them get to pitch. Now, this one you have to turn on between 5 and 10 minutes before it's really kind of rock solid. Now, that sounds bonkers. I remember using a memory moog once. I think it was a 12 oscillator, and you used to have to leave that on for an hour before all the oscillators were getting into tune. So, as you can see, that's really authentic analog. Then the oscillator mixer here, we can mix between our subs, our saw, our square, our triangle, and noise. You can bring noise into it. We can bring a separate audio source in, and we can then put that through the envelopes and the filters, which is really cool. So you can put a guitar through this, or an external synth back into this. And then we have a filter envelope, which means we can shape the filter over time. Then we have the amplifier envelope, which means we can shape the sound over time. So we can either have very slow sounds, or we can have very fast sounds. And then we have some more controls here. We can choose whether the mod wheel controls the cutoff, the vibrato, or the LFO amount. And we have aftertouch on here as well. That wasn't on a lot of original synths, so that's a nice touch to have. We have a bend range, and we have a glide. What glide means is that as we move between two notes, it will, in fact, I'll just put some, let's just change all these sounds very quickly. And we'll bring in the ultra saw, and we'll bring that up here. So that's what glide does. So that's the glide. Now, the one thing, and it's a small thing I'm going to say straight away while I'm here on the bend range, the bend range isn't notched at all. So you do have to do a little bit of work to figure out what you're setting it to. So that is now doing it over a tone. So that's a little thing, but of course, that might be a taste thing. Some of you might like the idea that the bend range can be slightly pushed around, and it doesn't quite have to stay right on the tone. Then this is very important. This is where we can use the LFO to drive the pulse width or the metalizer. And that's very important because, especially within pulse width really is only effective when it's moving. And what we mean by pulse width is, in the early days of synths, let's just turn all these off and just bring everything, let's get everything nice and flat. I'm going to turn the filter off, just turn it all up, so the resonance down, turn the envelopes off and stuff like that. So there we have a square wave. And in the early days of synths, because oscillators were expensive and synths were expensive to make, they came up with this idea of pulse width. And what pulse width enables you to do is to create a much bigger sound from a single oscillator. But what's important about it is, if there's no envelope on it, all you're doing is changing the width of the pulse. And what I mean by pulse width, and I'm just going to put a plug out here now. I do a synth explain series on Groove 3. Now, if you really want to get into synthesis, you really need to understand the basics of synthesis. Now, what we mean by pulse width is that the waveform is the same length on the top as it is on the bottom. And what pulse width enables you to do is to change the width of the pulse. So you can narrow it and change the shape of the waveform, so it's not equidistant at the top and the bottom. And so there's a regular square wave. So there's a regular square wave. Now, what's really interesting is that actually really is only cool when you put an envelope on it. So if we take the envelope here and we take it to the minus position and we add an attack envelope on it now, you can hear it changing over time. Now, on a lower sound, hear it altering as we go over time. Make it slower, faster. Around about there, it really starts to be nice. So there we have pulse width, and then the metalizer you can do the same with as well. And with the metalizer, we're going to have a very, very, very up here. Create really nice metallic sounds, and let's just take the envelope off it a sec. Very nice. And we put like let's get the arpeggiator now. the keyboard tracking off for a second. Then we can start to mix some more sound in, like the square. Bit of noise. Moving the sub now. You can hear the filter envelope now changing the filter. You can really resonate those filters. Turn that off for a second because I want to show you the ultra saw as well. So we have a saw wave. Bring the sub in then. We could change the wave instead to a square wave in the sub. Let's bring some more waveforms in. Let's bring it in a bit of square as well. Let's use the brute force as well. Let's just set the sub down a bit for a minute. And let's just oscillate that a bit. As you can hear, it just goes a bit random. But it can add a real energy in there. Let's just try some bass sounds. There's some vibrato in, but we won't do it as pitch. Make it wobble. And that's running the filter now. There we go. More subtle now. But the bottom end is just really huge, which is nice. So it does sound analog. And then of course we can mix the oscillators, which is really nice. Add some more ultra saw back in. It's got a really nice solid bottom end there now. Now, there's a piece of software that ships with as well that allows you to do things like set MIDI channels, set things like the arpeggiator and things like that. It's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And I'll give you a screenshot of that now to have a look at. And you can see what it does. And it's USB connected, and it can enable you to download different firmware versions as well if you need to update the firmware. But instead of using the mod wheel, we could use the aftertouch instead to control that filter. That's the bottom end, and of course, if we come at the top end, turn it all back off again. We could then choose something like a straightforward turn the metalizer off. Yeah, forgive me for catching the camera there. Bit of wobble. We're not the synthesizer type. So there we are, a show and tell. Of course, it's down to your imagination then, but it is a fantastic analog synth. Proper hardware, as I say, really solid. If you get hold of one, you won't believe how solid it is. I think they've put some kind of breeze block inside it because it really does feel very, very solid. Much more solid than SH-101 ever felt. And so I suppose comparisons are going to be tried to be made. But I've used SH-101s, I've used Mini Moogs and stuff like that, and I think this is rather than trying to be something else, I think this is just a synth of its own. It's wonderfully built. It's a wonderful sound, and only limited by your imagination. If you're looking for a really cool, real synth, then I think you should check this out. Get to your local dealer and give this a try. Make sure you go to a dealer that understands how synthesizers work, rather than just one that's just sticking them on the shelves. And then give it a try and check out the website, watch some of the videos, and I think this is great, and it gets my thumbs up for something, a really great attempt by Arturia, who've made fantastic virtual instruments. So now to make a real one, a really proper one, flesh and blood. Good job. Check it out. See you again soon.